Good morning. I have a message to deliver you. Um, we have a new friend. A gentleman who was trying to help me get Derek out because I told you. Um, Derek has a $7,500 bond. We don't have money for because we were cleaned out. I was cleaned out, and he tried to set up assistance from a bail bondsman locally. Bail bondsman from Shamrock Bail Bonds, right there in downtown Lee County. And he called me, and he seemed like a genuine person. Usually I don't answer phone calls to my number because everybody has my number, especially when they're from a restricted number. And I learned even spammers call me from restricted numbers. And I picked it up because I didn't know who it was. The FBI calls from restricted numbers. Law enforcement calls from restricted numbers, and so I didn't know who it was. And Derek is in jail, so I picked it up, and it turned out to be a friend who was trying to help Derek get out of jail on his birthday. Today's his birthday. And he just seemed genuine. And I've learned to trust my intuition, so I took what he said at face value. He was trying to get Derek out of jail. He was going to put, the bond down, knowing that when Derek got out, he would have money. And he had it all set up at Shamrock because I explained to him my situation, how I had negative $99 trillion in my First Horizon account. And he was willing to help out. And he asked, all I needed to do was go down to Shamrock Bail Bonds and sign some papers. They just needed 2 signatures. Everything was in place. And so I went down to Shamrock Bail Bonds. And the moment that I pulled into the parking space, the parallel parking space, which was freed for me just moments before, right in front of view of the Shamrock Bail Bonds, I got a restricted call. And so I thought, well, this is Derek's friend. He's calling me again. And it turned out to be a woman's voice. And the woman's voice said that my husband had been sleeping in her home with another woman 3 weeks prior. And they found out, and it wasn't until afterwards she found out that he was legally married to me. And I said to her, I knew she was lying. My intuition was telling me she was lying. And it was evil spell work on top of that, right? This is black magic. I told you about this. And so I said, well, who are you? And why are you calling from a restricted number? As she hung up the phone. And then I walked into the Shamrock. And there was a beautiful Hispanic lady sitting behind a computer, behind the counter. And I told her that there should be some paperwork in place for me to sign for my husband's bond. And when I looked at her, I realized I saw the same thing in her that I saw in Miss Leslie the first day I met her at the Lotus at the Villages Walk. Almost a sense of fear, but almost, I felt that jealousy. I felt that evilness of spirit. And she said to me, no, I don't have anything here for him. And I said, well, are you sure? Because his friend assured me that everything was in place and that they had talked to you. And so she looks on her computer and she says, oh, $7,500 bond. Well, some guy named Roger called, but he just inquired. Nothing was set up. And I said, oh, okay. And I think I told her that I thought it was a setup. And she said, well, what can I do? And I said, well, We have a lot of evil, demonic enemies. And I said, so if you're a woman of faith, you can pray. And I walked out. And so this morning I get a call from Derek's friend. Did you get it all set up? Is he out? He wanted to see him out by his birthday. And I said no. And I told him what happened at Shamrock Bail Bonds. And he seemed puzzled. I almost didn't answer the call because I thought, well, maybe he was a setup. Maybe I shouldn't have trusted my intuition. And in the end, he turned out to be genuine. He had been deceived by Shamrock Bail Bonds. And I was convinced that the moment she saw me pull up in my purple Jeep, she was the one who called me from the restricted number. And when I asked her what her name was and why she was calling from a restricted number, she hung up. When I walked in, she looked nervous, that she knew she was being caught in a lie. And the Shamrock people who claimed to Derek's friend that they were going to get him out were in on it with the Lee County Sheriff's Office, who charged Derek with battery after he defended himself from a man wielding a baseball bat who claimed to have been sent there by my ex-husband and Pinky Jean. And I'm not even sure they're not the same bail bondsmen who followed him the night my PIN number and my debit card number were compromised and given to my brother, who threatened us with physical violence, and my sister-in-law, who ran the branch of First Horizon located on McGregor. The withdrawals were made there. The number was compromised through a bail bondsman. And they printed out another debit card and they cleaned me out. And that's why I couldn't put any money down on a bond for my husband. And I also needed to add, I put this up on my post for the FBI so they don't have to watch these messages all the way through. But I do these for you because I interject some points of faith and hope. And just exposing who our enemies are. When my husband was arrested by Officer Rupert, who called him the N-word, and told him there had to be drugs in the car because the windows were tinted, the first truck to arrive on the scene was the drug dog guy who worked with the sheriff's office. He was a deputy there with Hardy Sheriff's Office. He was the first one there. And because Derek was screaming so loudly, he called a 94. Because Derek was screaming so loudly in the background, calling him a racist, they sent other deputies out, and finally the sheriff. And there are many, many points where Rupert is having conversations with not only the sheriff, but his other fellow deputies. And he's muted his body cam intentionally. You can see his hand go up several times. At one point, one of the deputies points to the body cam to remind him he needs to mute it. And there is a conversation that happens that Derek listened to when they pulled out my registration and saw that my name matched the name of my brother, who had lived in Hardy County for many years. And Officer Rupert worked for the Manatee from the years 2003 to 2013 in the Bradenton area. And I believe Miss Margaret is telling me he knew my ex-husband, Joe Prettyman. Bradenton is also where the man Eric, met his young wife, I believe a minor, then, 10 years ago. And Eric, if you heard the story, was paid by my ex to follow me to the Hertz Arena the night before the storm. Derek overheard the conversation between the deputies, who knew of my association with my brother because I was his sister. And he lived there for many years with his first wife, Marcia Locklear, and their family. I got a message last night. I got a couple of messages. One of them was from a gentleman reader. Most of my readers are female, from all kinds of different backgrounds, but this one in particular is gentleman, and he has a sort of Cajun accent, so I know he's from the Louisiana area, which is close to where my ex-husband lives. In between where I am and where my ex-husband lives, it's about a 23-hour drive. And he gave me a message last night that there's going to be 10 or more people imprisoned in a federal prison because of what I've done here. And I will continue to do that because there are more and more people who are going to federal prison who have victimized us. And in the end, the bail bondsmen are in it with the crooked cops. And the lead to Shamrock and the lead to the bail bondsmen who followed Derek, compromising my debit card number, and the insistence of the Hardy County Sheriff's Office that I just post bond $100 with the bondsmen, and how put out they were and angry that I insisted on driving 2.5 hours to post full bonds myself, full cash bond myself, without intervention of a bail bondsman. They were angry. And when you listen to the body cam footage, when I listened to the body cam footage of the places where it wasn't intentionally muted, there is a conversation that happens between deputies about how many you got. How many did you get today? And when Rupert pulled out the $400 that my husband had reserved for treating his friends who were doing cleanup work after the hurricane to a trip to Orlando, he kept asking about the money in his wallet. He kept asking about the money in his wallet. And Rupert said, I got your wallet. He had already removed the $400 bills, $400 bills from his wallet. And he threw them in the cab of the officer who drove the drug dogs, the first one to arrive at the scene. And Hardy County refused to provide dash cam footage, which would have incriminated Derek and exonerated Mr. Rupert, because in the end, he did call him the N-word. In the end, he did antagonize him and target him. And that's why Derek was on the defensive. I told you this before, he's PTSD triggered. And how convenient it was that any of the other witnesses couldn't be contacted. And how convenient it was, and sad really, that my stepdaughter was raped the weekend before he was to appear in Hardy County Court. She was raped for the second time as a minor. And for the second time, her perpetrator was allowed to go free. And in this time, Officer C.R. Smith, badge number 19128, escorted the perpetrator home to 3160 Calusa Parkway. And my husband and my stepdaughter were interrogated for 15 hours. Their cell phones were confiscated. His 2 cell phones confiscated conveniently 5 days before he was to appear in Hardy County Court with our NAACP lawyer. That I had to hawk my music equipment for, to pay for. Because Judge Brian Horton would not afford him a public defender, which we asked for because of my talking to the NAACP lawyer, the legal advisor in Washington, D.C., because I could get no help from Brother James, and I knew that. The bail bondsmen are in it with the crooked cops. That's how it works down here. And that's why you can't get justice. And they're so desperate at not being discovered, they would willing to make a cruel call and utter more lies to destroy the reputation of someone who's only in jail as a prayer warrior. Today is Derek's birthday. I don't have money for bond. Again, I have negative $99 trillion in my First Horizon account. But in the end, it's about facing your fears. Because Marceno and Sutton had me carted off to Park Royal, and I realized the one thing I feared the most really wasn't worth fearing. Because in the end, after 7 days, I realized I was there for other people, to help other people. I don't know, maybe even some members of the staff. Certainly to expose them. Because Park Royal is a terrible, terrible, terrible scam. It's just a jail. It's just another jail where you have even less rights than you do at the Marceno Motel. And so every day I have a different job. Last night I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to walk the dog. No, it was midnight. I don't remember. And then I couldn't sleep. So last night I was a graphic designer. And I was working again through my art. And so I put up a Photoshop, badly doctored Photoshop, because apparently in Lee County, you can enter badly doctored Photoshops as evidence now. And it was my manifestation from my purple Jeep of the next resident of the Marceno Motel. But in truth, Mr. Marceno will go to federal prison. And people who fare worse than pedophiles in federal prison or any other prison are dirty cops. That was my manifestation for Mr. Marceno. And I'm also going to tell you a little bit about my dog Charlie this morning. I realized something. I have spirit guides. My husband has spirit guides. That's why I know he won't lie to me. That's why I know the woman who called to tell me that he was sleeping with another woman was lying. Because Miss Margaret is only one of 3 people who said they'd take him out if he did something like that to me. And he believes it, and I believe it. When I was living with Nancy, I said I had my dog Abby, I had my dog Shadow. And when people tell me, about their pets, losing their pets, I always tell them, you'll see him again. You'll see him again. And I talked about to Nancy that I had a spirit dog, a black lab named Albert. Male or female? And I realized That spirit dog is my doggy Charlie. He's a chocolate lab. Maybe he was a black lab in a different life. I don't know. I think he was a horse in one life because he drags me around like he's a horse. I call him Charlie Horse. But he has spirit guides too, and he knows the evil people from the not evil people. And I talk about Priscilla. How she was my little buddy, but in the end, when my brother was just so possessed by demons, she was too. And I've said this to people repeatedly, especially when I went to the Hampton Inn at Port Charlotte, where they have pets. Pets, pets have the same spirits their owners do. And so this is one of the reasons why pit bulls get a bad rap, because pit bulls are very empathic dogs. And so people like Mike Vicks and, the Hispanic drug lord just around the corner from Deja's roach-ridden apartment, break them. They break their spirits and they turn them into evil dogs. And I told you before, I don't like little yippy dogs. And part of that was, my experience as a young woman. Because I was treated like a slave by my mother-in-law. And I was forced to clean up a lot. And she always took credit for my hard work. She always did. And she had this little chihuahua that just shit all over the place in the house. And I was forced to clean that up. And my prospective mother-in-law, Christine Searspede, had a little nasty chihuahua. And I sense that nastiness of spirit. And Charlie does too. Charlie knows these little yippy dogs that are owned by these, self-righteous Trump lovers and other evil people are evil. And so today we were walking, and I just out of nowhere, I didn't even see him. This Hispanic woman was walking these two terriers. One was like a whitish looking, and the other one was dark. And the terrier starts barking at my dog, and my dog just heads for its throat. And they're both yipping and fighting, and I'm trying to pull him back. And the woman, who was Hispanic, obviously, she didn't even seem so concerned about her dog as she did about me recognizing her. And then I saw obviously her daughter, standing in the sliding doors of their apartment, calling her to come back. And I see that their apartment number is 104, just like mine. A couple of days ago, a pizza woman came to the door and knocked on the door. And she said, "Did you order a pizza?" Of course, I'm trying to keep my dog back because I think I had just given him a bath and he didn't have a collar. And she said, she said, somebody ordered a pizza in 104. I said, well, I explained to her that all these buildings have the same apartment numbers, but the buildings have different numbers. And I said, it must be a different building. And I thought, well, maybe that pizza was for them. Because again, everything is divinely planned. Nothing happens by accident. And when they went into the apartment, I just stared at them and looked at them and studied them. And I realized that building is right across from the marshy area, which I've been telling the FBI about. And the area behind the garages, which are climate controlled. Unlike all of the other garages in this area, that one is climate controlled. And I had always told my ex-husband this. I told him that when we moved into the public storage, I said, how much drug money and illegal drugs do you think are here? I had a climate controlled unit because I hid silk. I couldn't leave silk in a hot, or any of my art for that matter, in a hot Florida storage space without some sort of climate control. And I said, in the end, if you're hiding stuff like cocaine, you have to have climate control. because it's so humid in Florida. You can't store anything like that if it's not climate controlled. And this particular garage is the only one that's climate controlled. It has a little maintenance room off to the side, but it only has 4 units instead of 5 like the other ones. And it's actually behind that garage and the carports on either side of it, where Charlie is sniffing crazily. And the marshy area where my mother's butterflies are, where she's telling me there's something awful buried underneath. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, do these people all list as leaseholders here? Because when my husband moved in, he was required to be added as a leaseholder, right? Anybody over 18 years old. And that's when I paid the $85, and I explained to Miss Leslie that I didn't add him before because he had a background, but that I needed him there, and that all he needed to do was ask some of the fellow residents about his character. And I understood he had a background, he had a derogatory background. And she said, well, there's nothing I can do. I just have to send it in to the inland. And less than an hour later, she called and happily told me that Derek would have to move out. And that is when the whole HUD complaint and retaliation started. And because I noticed things. I noticed things like notices going out for people as to when the pool's closed, you know. And I see white guys walking at midnight over to the pool. The rules don't apply to them. I see frat boys. You know, they say no parties here. And I see 3 carloads of frat boys going to the back of the apartment complex. Obviously in the same apartment. Are they all living there? Are they all leaseholders? Or are they just having a party, which is against the rules? Because they're all white. And apparently, if you're white, the rules don't apply. And I see these people here with 2 dogs. Do they pay their $85 fee on both those dogs? And is every person who is living in that apartment a leaseholder? Or even a legal alien? And what's in those apartments? What's in those garages? Can we see what's inside? Can we see what's inside of the garages that have climate control? Because my gut is telling me there's something in there. And Miss Margaret is telling me there's something buried underneath this complex. An awful, ugly secret. Everything is divinely planned. Me being here at these apartments because they shared the same name that I chose to take on after I divorced my ex-husband. I changed my channel even before I divorced my ex-husband. God was telling me to come here for a mission. And now I think, because I'm being evicted, they're about ready to shut off my hot wire, probably my electricity. I have very little left in here, strewn all over in disarray, which is usually how I live anyway. And now that I've collected this for the FBI, I'm just posting it now. It's time for me to go. I still don't know where. I certainly can't leave until my husband gets out of jail. But in the end, there is justice for him. I know there is. And he's there for a reason. This is his birthday today. I tried to drop off pictures of our wedding photos with our rings, which we had to turn in and pawn. I had to pawn my ring. So sad. But we'll get more. And a ring is just a ring. It's what's inside your heart that matters when you're committed. And I'm committed to getting him out and getting him justice and getting his record expunged. Because in the end, he was charged for a whole shitload of crimes he didn't do. He had co-defendants. It was an arson case he was charged with. He didn't do any of that. That was somebody else. And it was all part of a concerted conspiracy to keep him in jail. Because in the end, Carmine Marceno, Lee County Sheriff's Office, the innkeeper, gets money per head for every person that's incarcerated in the Lee County Jail, wrongfully or rightfully. And that is his motivation for keeping people in the jail on the 3D. But for people like Derek's adoptive mother, her motivation is more evil, is more spiritual. And in the end, Carmine is just as evil as Christine P. It's all about keeping us trapped, right? Keeping us trapped in mental institutions, keeping us trapped in jails. And it's time for God's people to break free. And so I offer him hopeful messages on email, the Lee County email system. And I tell him, you're there for a reason. He said, they call me the prayer warrior. He said yesterday they had 47 men join hands inside the jail to pray. We are about to deliver God's people from the clutches of evil. And that's what I'm sent here to do. And so that's the message I'm delivering you today. A message of hope. And I'm going to share a song with you. One of my songs. As I always do. I'm going to send you a song. We are the salt. Jesus says we are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. And that's the message I want to deliver you today. Thank you for watching and have a blessed day.
We are the salt of earth. We are the light. We are the light of the world. People here are dying. salt of earth. We are the light, we are the light of the world. We are the salt, we are the salt. We are the light, we are the salt and the light. He promises out of our hearts will flow the Holy Spirit, the living water. Tell all the world so we can share good news to brothers and sisters and sons and daughters. We are the salt, we are the salt of earth. We are the light, we are the light of the world. He promises out of our hearts will flow the Holy Spirit, the living water. Tell all the world so we can share good news to brothers and sisters and sons and daughters. We are the salt, we are the salt of earth. We are the light, we are the light of the world.